In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
You've joined the Almost Unbelievable podcast with Katz and Ranty. I'm Katz. You there, Ranty?
I am Katz, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really well today. I'm looking forward for another story. Just tell me, Ranty, is this story going to be one that maybe scares me? Is it going to be one that maybe gives me a problem to solve? Is it going to be alien-based? Give us a clue.
Well, today's should give you a problem to solve, but I would also go along and say that it's actually a very terrifying story too. So if you're a little bit scared right now, maybe come back another time and listen to the rest of this, because this one is definitely up there with the scare factor.
Well, let me see if I can give you a little story of my own before we start. One that is a true story, and see what you make of it. We'll see if there is a tenuous link to today's story. Are you ready?
Okay.
Now, we all know that the film The Exorcist caused a massive stir when it came out, and it frightened people in theatres. People couldn't sleep. The number of reported ghost sightings and exorcisms shot through the roof. It had a real massive effect on society. And one place where this effect was severely felt was in West Yorkshire, England. Not too far from me at all. I think I can be there in about 20 minutes. And in 1974, there was a certain Mr. Taylor. He was a 31-year-old man, father of 5. Now, Mr. Taylor was a very cheery fellow. He wasn't always cheery. He was prone to small bouts of depression, but generally was a really nice guy, really nice family guy. But he wasn't religious. He had no spiritual side to him whatsoever. However, the rest of his family did. And the Taylor household, they joined a local Christian organisation, a church organisation called Christian Fellowship Group. Now, Michael started to begin attending the church services. Although he wasn't religious, there was an extremely attractive 21-year-old Mrs. Robinson, or Miss Robinson, who happened to be the preacher. Now, whether that had anything to do with it or not, I have no idea. But it does appear that Miss Robinson and Mr. Taylor started spending a lot of time in each other's company talking about church issues. Now, as this went on, Mr. Robinson's personality, would you believe it or not, changed. He became secretive towards his wife and family. He quite often would forget where he'd been for long periods of time. What's he sounding like at the minute, Ranty?
Well, I know what it's sounding like, but you carry on.
Well, and this all came to a head when he was in utter confusion one day when he happened to be found naked with Miss Robinson. But obviously, he wasn't sure what had happened, and he started to blame his strange behaviour on an evil presence within himself. Now, a local Anglican vicar was called in to perform an exorcism on Mr. Taylor, and this exorcism lasted all night on a chilly October night, 1974. Now, the vicar claimed that he and other ministers apparently drove out over 40 demons from Mr. Taylor. These demons gave the name bestiality, incest, lewdness, blasphemy. However, the clergyman did say that they gave up on the exorcism with 3 demons still left that they couldn't quite get rid of. They were going to come back another time. And those demons were called murder, violence, and insanity. And they were still in Mr. Taylor. So with a return exorcism planned to get rid of those people, they went home. But a few hours later, Mr. Taylor was found covered in blood. Now, he claimed the blood belonged to Satan himself, but the shocking tragedy is that blood actually belonged to his wife, Christine, whose body was later found in the family home. And Mr. Taylor was found not guilty by reasons of insanity. What do you think of that?
Well, what? I don't know. Actually, I'm
not a great deal to say, is there?
I mean, what do you want me to say? I mean, by all accounts, if you say it the way you've said it, it sounds to me as if this guy just had the perfect excuse to commit something like that. And I don't know. I mean, it's just...
It sounds horrific, doesn't it?
It's horrific. Yes, it is. Absolutely horrific. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely horrific. I mean, the idea that his poor wife went through that, the fact that he was in some way having some kind of affair with a different lady, and then on the night that he got quote unquote exorcised, he he had these demons still in him that, well, if you believe that, allowed him to then just have free reign to go ahead and murder his wife and get away with it in court. It's astonishing, actually.
It really is. It's a shocking story, and I did check on Google the news. This was a real life event that happened. Now, whether I'm certainly not saying that demons were responsible for that at all, but the murder and the exorcism and the characters involved, although the names might be changed, this is a story that happened. So it did get me thinking about people and being possessed or oppressed by demons or having things that follow you through your life, supernatural entities. Could today's story perhaps be linked in any way to somebody being followed by a supernatural entity?
Well, funnily enough, today's story is going to be something similar. Not quite as dreaded as that, but definitely similar. And today's guest is called Kai, and Kai is going to tell us a story about a man in a hat, or a hat man, whichever way you choose to call it. And she's going to tell us a story from the start. So, without further ado, I'm going to say, Kai, are you there?
All right, thank you. So I was raised in Puerto Rico, and my grandma had some past stuff with, I guess, sensory or stuff like that. I don't know if that's the reason why I get to see all these things. But the first time that I ever experienced any sort of paranormal or unexplained phenomena was around this time. I want to say about 7 or 8, and I was playing hide and seek with my friends in my backyard. And we had this little like laundry shed in the back, and it was just a little wood shed. And it didn't have light or anything, because it would just be like you would open a window and you could see just with the sun and stuff like that. So the shed had like multiple stuff in it, but you could, like, as a kid, you could hide anywhere in it. And I want to say it was like 3 or 4 of us, and we were just going around hiding. And I decided to hide in the shed, and the windows were closed, so it was relatively dark, but not really. And as I'm hiding, I see someone like in the shed with me. And honestly, I don't know why. I thought it was my mom. And I just look, and it's not my mom. It's like 6 feet tall. And it's just this black shadow in the corner. And I started feeling very, very uneasy. As a child, you see a shadow figure, you're scared. And I stared at it for like, I want to say 10 seconds, and I bounced. And I told my friends, like, there's somebody in the shed. And they just come in, and we're all seeing stuff. We don't see like the actual figure. So that was like the first time I got dismissed when I told my mom. And that was the first thing that I remember seeing. Afterwards, just growing up, I started seeing more and more stuff. Again with my friends, but this time I was proven to not be seeing this stuff by myself. I was out literally in the street with my friends. We're playing, and out of nowhere, all of us turn, and we see someone standing in the middle of the road. And you probably have heard of the Hat Man, or the shadow figure with the hat, or all that stuff. So this shadow figure that we saw in the middle of the road, all of us described it as the same thing. Tall, black, and had like some sort of like trench coat, and it was wearing a hat. So whenever, I realized that all of my friends saw the same thing, and we saw it for like a split second or two. Literally, it was just immediately gone as we saw it. So I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm not seeing this stuff by myself, so I'm not crazy. My friends kind of just like pretended like, oh, well, we did see that, but I guess that was just a fiction over my imagination or something. So that was really hard whenever I told my mother again. And my friends were basically like, I mean, yeah, we did see it, but I don't know, maybe we're kids, type of stuff. And fast forward to, I want to say 2 3 years later, that's when it really starts getting bad. I was already like in my teen years, maybe like I was like 12 or 13 maybe. um I was in the living room watching TV, and the living room is relatively dark because everything's like sort of turned off, but the TV is on. So you have the TV light, and I don't know how to explain it. So the TV is like in front of me, the sofa is in front of the TV, and next to the TV there's a hallway to the left side. And I'm sitting there with my brother and my mom, and we all of us see a person coming down the hall and turning into the kitchen. At the moment, it was just my brother and my mom and me living in the house. So we all just kind of looked at each other. We're like, the hell was that? And my brother immediately freaks out. I'm already seeing stuff, so I literally, the first thing I yell is, aha, you guys saw it. I know you guys saw it. And my mom stands up, turns the lights on, starts walking around. She can't see anything. But all of us actually experienced this shadow figure walking around. After that sighting, it, for some reason, I guess the shadow people or whatever I was seeing stuck to me, and I would be the only one that would experience all this stuff. So in my room, I would be sleeping and I would hear knocking on my window. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and just look out the window. I wouldn't see anything. I'm like, who the hell is knocking on my window at 3 a.m.? Like, what the hell? And I would go ahead to my mom and I'm like, hey, there's someone knocking on my window. Check the patio. Maybe there's someone behind or something. And they would go outside. They would check. Nobody was there. And that's whenever she started taking me to a therapist, because she literally thought that I was insane. Therapists honestly dismissed it as some sort of paranoia. And I kept experiencing that stuff. So my bed started shaking, like in the middle of the night. It would just start shaking, and I would wake up because my bed was shaking. It is not uncommon in Puerto Rico to have earthquakes, but it was every night, and I would check my phone. I even like downloaded an app that would track earthquakes, no matter how small they were. It would track earthquakes and would give me a little like notification as soon as it happened. And every time my bed would shake, I would check my phone and nothing. And I started not telling my mom about it because she was just gonna dismiss me anyways. So the bed would shake, and for the first times, I would just freak out, sit up, and look around. Nothing. So I was like, okay, whatever. But it was every night, and it was like shaking violently, like it would wake me up, and I'm a heavy sleeper. So when my bed was shaking one night, I sat up, and there was a figure at the end of my bed. And this has been one of the worst things that I've ever experienced, guys, because like it really took the breath out of me. I don't know what it was. It was, again, about 6, actually, I want to say like 7 feet tall. It was huge. It was pitch black, and it was standing like hunched over at the end of my bed. I froze because I did have the light of the window coming in from outside. So, my room wasn't completely pitch black, but I could still see this figure. And the bed would not stop shaking. And normally I would like it would shake. I would wake up and and the bed would stop shaking. This time, as I'm basically, I guess, making eye contact with this figure, the bed's still shaking. So my instinct is to grab the wall to see if the wall is shaking as well, because maybe this time it is an earthquake. The wall wasn't shaking, it was just the bed. But the entire time I'm looking at the figure in front of me, only thing I could fathom was just straight up to scream. So I'm screaming for my mom, my brother, whoever wants to come into my room to literally bust in the room. And the figure's still there. Immediately as my brother, he's like my little brother, he's like 2 years younger than me, he busts open the door and he sees the figure. We stare at the figure for like a good 5 to 10 seconds. Like, it was a long like stare. And my brother is literally just staring at it, eyes about to fall off his face, and he just starts screaming as well. And my mom comes in and she's like, "What's going on?" And the figure was gone. And the bed stopped shaking. I slept that night with my brother. And by sleep, I mean I spent like a week without sleeping in my brother's room. I would not go into my room because I was so scared of that. And I remember every day I would talk to my brother and I'm like, "What did you see?" And he's like, "I saw this like huge ass figure at the end of your bed." And I'm like, "Okay, but what did it look like?" And he's like, "It just looked like something that's not human." And I'm like, "Okay, because that's what I saw." And I even started to draw these things. And my mom would just basically dismiss both of us. She's like, "There's nothing. You guys are just crazy. Like, stop, go back to sleep. You're just kids, blah, blah, blah." And oh my God, it was hell. And I just started having sleeping problems because of that. I would not sleep in my room. I tried to change rooms with my brother, but he had seen the same thing, so he was scared. Um, so yeah, imagine me 13, 14, maybe 15 years old, sleeping with my baby brother because I was scared. Um, so anyways, all that stuff is happening. I can't remember if there was anything after that. Probably was, but I guess that was the most dramatic one. Fast forward to a couple of years later, I move over here to the United States. I moved to Texas, and I'm living by myself for the first time. Um, and I'm living alone in an apartment. And I'm reading one day, literally just sitting on the couch, fireplace going, very American of me. And, and I see, like, as I'm reading my book, this shadow person or shadowy figure standing by the doorway. And I look up from my book, stare at it for like, I guess, 5 seconds, gone. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever. In that apartment, I would start seeing those type of things every day. And it would just be shadow figures. And I was like, okay, whatever, sure. Like, that's just not new to me. I'm just looking at shadow figures. One of those figures would watch me sleep. It would stand over me, and I would just wake up and it was there. It was not like sleep paralysis because I could move. I could, talk or whatever. I was fully awake when I would wake up. So, people usually often would dismiss it as sleep paralysis. No, it wasn't. Like, I was awake. I moved. I talked, or I screamed. um, but that kept going on like a lot. And I would just wake up every night around the same time, around 2, 3 a.m., shadow figure all over me. So this is about the time that I started looking for cleanses. And I was like, okay, grandma, guide me or something. I'm about to do some witchy stuff. And I started cleansing my apartment with sage, like white sage and stuff, and white candles and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, let's see if this works. I think that just made whatever it was angry, because that's whenever I started hearing them. Um, Doors started opening randomly. Doors started shutting randomly. I would wake up randomly to just noises, and it would just be like my cabinets opening and shutting. Um, what else? I've had stuff like hidden or lost. Um, and I would hear random like footsteps. I would hear like people calling me. Even though I lived by myself, I would hear someone calling me. And sometimes it would just sound like the voice of my mother or the voice of my best friend. So it was always a voice that like I recognized, but it was weird because both of those people were back in Puerto Rico. There's no way that over here in Texas they're calling me. And literally I would just hear that. And that was freaking me out because I'm just hearing my name being called out of nowhere. Um and I guess there's two other stories ish that are like the most recent ones. So I just told y'all about like how this figure would stand over me as I slept. This was about, we're in January right now. That was like about April of last year. I was sleeping and I woke up, same shadow figure standing over me. I would scream, and after a few seconds it'd be gone. At this point I'm living with my fiance, so my fiance would literally wake up every night because I'm screaming. He would try to comfort me. He would never see this thing, so he would again dismiss me as crazy. One of these figures stood over me, and it wasn't just a shadow figure. This time I could actually see a person. I could see skin, I could see eyes, I could see mouth. And that was freaky because that was like the first time that I was actually seeing like a whole person, not just a figure. And every night it would get closer. And it, I just started not being able to sleep because I knew that if I woke up in the middle of the night, he was going to be closer to me. And I didn't want that. But, I would eventually fall asleep because I was tired, whatever. And this one night I fell asleep and he was completely on top of me, like face to face. I could see his eyes. I could see his smile because he had a really, really like creepy smile. And he had dirt all over him, which was weird. I didn't know why he had dirt all over him. But I could feel his pressure on me. I could feel him on me. And people were like, my husband was like, oh, that's sleep paralysis. And I'm like, did I not scream? Did I not move? Yes, I did. I literally pushed it off of me and I felt it. Like literally the same way that I push him off of me, I felt that weight. It was a person on top of me. And he's like, there's no way that a person is coming into our apartment in the middle of the night and just laying on top of you, Kai. Like, there's just no way that that's happening. And I became obsessed. I was like, you need to check the locks. You need to check the fucking windows. Like, there's someone coming in here. I did cleanse and I did not sleep for, I want to say, a good 4 or 5 days because I didn't want to see him. And he would just randomly show up, but I guess with the cleanse he kind of stayed away. I don't know. Literally a week ago, this happened a week ago. I was showering and my husband was like coming out of the shower, and we have our bathroom in front of our bedroom. So there's like a very small hallway in between those doors. But from the bathroom, there's a mirror that you can see into the room. And I'm talking in the shower, talking to my husband, blah, blah, blah. And he freezes staring at the mirror and he just goes, huh. And I'm like, huh, what do you mean, huh? And he's like, come here. And I'm like, okay. And I step outside and look, and he's like, look in the mirror. And I look, and there is a figure standing in our doorway from our bedroom. And we both just stare at it for like a good 3 to 4 seconds. And it was gone. And I just turned to my husband and I'm like, you saw that? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, you actually saw that? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, oh my God. You just saw a figure. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I was like, you believe me now? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, you believe me? So I get excited. I get really, really excited. And I don't know why I did this. I think I was just excited because my husband was seeing it for the first time. And I just literally walk towards where it was and I start talking to it. And I just go, hey, thank you for proving to my husband that I am not crazy. Now, can you please come back and make another appearance to where, you know, I don't know, just further prove to him that you're real type of thing. And my husband was just like behind me, and honestly he looked spooked, and that's very hard because my husband, it does not scare easily. So he looked spooked, and I don't know, I guess I just invited whatever it was to stay with us when I did that. But yeah, whatever, I just went into bed and I kept talking to my husband, and I'm like, so what did you see? And he's like, the same thing as you did. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but explain it to me. So he does. And he's like, yeah, shadow figure, blah, blah, blah. But then he mentions a hat. And I was like, wait, I didn't see a hat. And he's like, you didn't see the little like hat on top of it? And I'm like, I guess not. I don't know, maybe. I mean, I'm so used to seeing these things that honestly I guess I missed it. And he's like, yeah, no, it was like about 6 feet tall or taller. And I'm like, yes. Dark, yes. It was wearing like a trench coat type of thing. And I'm like, yes, I saw that. And he's like, did you see the eyes? And I'm like, yeah. They were like red or something like that. And he's like, yeah, they were like glowing. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't see a hat. And he's like, I swear there was a hat. And I was like, okay, well, I've read enough about the freaking Hat Man. And, you know, apparently the Hat Man is a bad entity or whatever, and he usually shows up when something bad is going to happen. We literally about a week ago, we were going through some stressful stuff. And, you know, I want to say that the reason that we both saw that was because of the stress that we were going through. So immediately when I tell that to my husband, he's like, oh, then we just had some shared hallucination. And I'm like, how the are we gonna have a shared hallucination, dude? Like, we're not doing psychedelics right now. Like, this was raw. There's no way that we can share a hallucination. And he literally started to be like Kat. He was just like, nah, that's not real. I don't know what I saw. I didn't see anything. I'm like, bro, don't do this to me. So literally right after that happened, he turned off emotionally. That entire week, he was not there. It was just like he was just not a person, I guess. Which, I don't know, it was weird, but when I would ask him if he was okay, he's just, I guess I'm just too stressed, I don't know. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that happens. One of the nights, he goes to sleep, whatever, and I'm sleeping, but I'm still like sort of awake. And this man starts seizing in his sleep, like a full-on seizure, like eyes rolled up to the back of his head, and he's having a seizure. I had never seen him like that, so I freak out. And I just turn him to his side, and I'm like, oh my God, he's having a seizure. So I just turn him to his side, and I stay there waiting for the seizure to be gone. It takes him like a little bit to come to. And whenever he starts seizing and I just see him normal again, I shake him and I'm like, hey, are you okay? And he wakes up and he's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, why? And I'm like, what just happened? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you were seizing or you were shaking. And he's like, oh, that's weird. And I'm like, oh, that's weird? Okay. And he's like, I was having this dream. And I'm like, you were having a dream? And he's like, yes. In the dream, I was seeing that figure that we saw. And I'm like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah. And in the dream, it was like getting really close to me. And I was actually like really scared. And I don't know, like one thing led to another, and you're talking to some like lady to do like an exorcism or a cleanse in the apartment or something like that. And once the cleanse starts, that's when I woke up. But in reality, he didn't wake up, he just started seizing. And I was like, oh my God, that is so weird. And like, what a coincidence that whenever that's happening in the dream, that's when you start seizing. And he's like, you're looking too much into it or whatever. And I was like, okay, sure. So literally this happened a week ago. And ever since that day, I just find like small stuff moved around. Like the other day I had literally I have this like little like altar or whatever, and nobody touches that. Literally. My husband knows not to touch that. And one of my like flowers, it's like petals or whatever, it's in a little shower or whatever that is open, and I couldn't find the jar. I'm like, what the fuck? Who touched my jar? And I told him, you touched my jar. And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, I guess maybe one of the cats did, but I couldn't find it on the floor or anything. I was like, what the hell? That's weird. I couldn't find the jar literally anywhere I looked, so I was like, well, I guess I threw it out or something. And literally about 2 hours later, randomly just cleaning, I see the freaking thing right there in the same spot. I'm like, that wasn't there. Like, where did it go and why is it back in the same spot? Um, Doors randomly open, same thing as always. I hear footsteps, I hear stuff moving. Um, and I guess, the cabinets, sometimes I just hear it in the random of the night, just bang, 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 bang. And I think that's it. Pretty sure.
Wow.
Wow.
I was holding my
Lot
breath
to
for most of
digest.
that. I was taking deep breaths and going, what's she going to come up with next? And then it just seemed to get darker and darker. Wow.
Yeah, I tried to put it like as chronologically as I could. I might be missing some stuff, but like, yeah, that's all of it.
Well, I think we have to just address a couple of questions, a couple of housekeeping questions first. I guess the first one is going to be, you mentioned that your mum wanted to take you to get some kind of treatment done. Do you want to elaborate on what kind of treatment you went for, or what they thought it may have been at that time?
So I did go to like a therapist, psychologist, whatever, and just to address, because she thought I just had some sort of schizophrenia going on, and now I was having hallucinations. And doctor straight up just said, honestly, just sounds like you're paranoid. I don't think that's hallucinations, and doesn't chalk up to hallucinations, especially whenever it's shared with other people. So they didn't diagnose me with anything, and I still to this day go to therapists, and I've never been diagnosed with hallucinations or anything like that.
Okay, and your grandma, you mentioned your grandma in the story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, sure. So my grandma she was like what they call a santera or santeria. She was just, I don't know, I saw her always like, doing the whole killing a chicken type of thing, using the blood to do random stuff. She would like, there was always like some sort of smoke in the house because she was always like cleansing stuff. She was the type of person who would grab some like random plants and just smack someone or some, that type of stuff. She would always dress in like white. She always had candles. I don't know. It's just like the typical Santeria type of thing. That's what she would do. And then,
well, can I ask,
I don't know.
What is a Santeria? Is that like a witch doctor or something?
No, Santeria would be just some sort of, I guess, voodoo, if you want to put it into words. It's very common in the Caribbean or Louisiana type of stuff. Like it's basically voodoo.
Okay, did you say voodoo or voodoo? Sorry.
Yeah, it's voodoo, like VOODOO.
Oh, voodoo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you were young and your bed was shaking,
Mhm.
did anybody else in the house feel anything shaking? You know, did it happen to it, or was it literally just you and your bed?
It was always me in my bed. I would always ask my mom and my brother, like, "Hey, did you guys feel that?" And they'd be like, "Nope."
Wow. And they couldn't hear the bed shake. Like, so how violently would we say it was shaking? Was it just a noticeable movement, or was it the legs coming off the floor? What was it like?
No, it was like more like noticeable movement. I don't think it ever made a noise. Maybe it did, but the bed that I had was like a platform bed. Like it didn't have an under part to the bed.
Right.
So it was just like a platform. It was like a wood platform on the bottom, and then the mattress was on top.
Got you. Got you. Hmm.
Is your mum is your mum a psychic in any way, shape, or form, or would you say that it passed her skip to generation kind of thing?
Um, my mom has seen stuff. She just kind of she's the type of person, if I don't believe it, it's not real type of thing. But she has told me stories of stuff that she has seen before, and I always tell her like, okay, so you'll know that I'm not crazy. And she's like, yeah, but if I think about it, then it just makes it more real. So yeah. So she can see stuff as well. She just denies it.
And are you like the firstborn of your mum?
I Yes, it was grandma, my mom, and me. Yeah.
And when you speak about this kind of stuff to your brother now, what's his memories of the figure he saw?
Actually, I spoke to him the other day whenever my husband and I saw that shadowy figure, and he just started recalling everything that we saw as kids. And like, cuz he lives like literally in apartments like right next to me, so I can just walk over there. And I walked over the morning after we saw that Hat Man thing, and I told him, and he's like, "Oh my god, you remember that one day we saw that shadow figure at the end of your bed?" And I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "Dude, that was crazy." And I was just like, "Yes." And then we started talking about everything else, and he still remembers everything. So, so yeah.
Well, I've never really heard of the words or the story of a hat man, so to speak. But is that some kind of story that you're aware of? Is that a normal story? A hat man, is that normal?
I
I've heard
guess
that a
like,
lot.
yeah, in that forum that like you guys posted, that's wherever I found out of the Hat Man. So that's what I call him now. But back then, I just knew that there was a shadow figure that had a hat that I always see, and apparently it's very normal in people. A lot of people look at him, like have seen him, and they refer to him as the Hat Man.
Yeah, it's definitely the name I've heard a lot. I have heard a lot of accounts of him having red eyes, but not
Yeah.
always. Did you see red eyes?
Yes.
Yeah. Apologies if you said that and I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that. He said they were red eyes. You thought they were red eyes too. This is this is quite a scary story, I have to say. I mean, the fact that when he was in the shower, that incident at the shower happened, and then the seizing happened in the bed. And it's
Yeah.
interesting that you say his emotions have switched off since this event, and that could be in some way his body coming to terms with what he actually saw. A lot of people, don't forget,
Yeah.
they're not built like they can just go out and see a poltergeist or a shadow man and just the next day forget about it like it's not going to cause a problem. A lot of people will see that and it'll have a deep, profound effect on them for the next few months, and you might find that whatever's going on with your husband or your fiance, whichever it is likely to dwell on for quite some time, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it definitely took a toll on him. He just, I guess, he's the type of person who doesn't like to admit that something did took a toll on him. So, yeah. But I'm pretty sure it did, because to the point where he was having nightmares about it and he literally just shut off emotionally. It was very weird.
Okay, well, I have another housekeeping question, which is basically going to be, you mentioned that whenever you see or you've seen these things and they've had a profound effect on you personally, like a really scary event, your response to that is to not have any sleep for several days. Now, if here in the UK, I know that one of my ex's brothers had a problem when he didn't sleep for several days, he started to see more things and feel more things, and kind of definitely get paranoid. Do you think
Yeah.
that this reaction that you do, this lack of sleep, in some way creates things that maybe aren't there, that you see things that aren't really there? Do you think
I
that's
mean,
if you were being logical about it, and Cats may bring this up, do you think that could be an explanation for what you've seen?
that I guess that would explain after I see the stuff. But usually, whenever I do see the stuff, I'm sleeping pretty well. After, if I don't sleep for a couple days, I guess I do get a little bit irrational, but I don't know, maybe during those days that I'm not sleeping, I don't know if I saw stuff. I'm pretty sure that I did afterwards, but it's always after I'm sleeping. Like, it's like they like to wake me up because they like the way I scream. Like, it literally just sounds like that.
I was going to say, just does a scream now so we can get an idea of what it sounds like. Right. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this, or anything else you'd like to ask Kat?
I don't know. I guess I want to ask Kat, like, what I would ask my husband, which would be just like, would you think that I'm just like some crazy person that just has weird hallucinations? Or do you actually believe that there's something going on?
Oh, you see, that is a heck of a question. You put me on the spot. No, I certainly don't think anybody who I don't think anybody who comes up with stories like that is crazy. I mean, I was saying to Auntie before, and I think we were talking about people who have experienced astral projection or claim they've experienced astral projection. I think these events, or the perception of these events, is very, very, very real. And if somebody says to me they've seen a shadow man, or someone says to me they think they've been astral projecting, I'm certainly not going to say, oh, I think you're crazy, because it's far too common for people to see this. There is a cause to it, and I might disagree on what that cause is, but I certainly won't call anyone crazy for saying they've seen it, because people, undoubtedly, thousands of people do have these experiences, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing with Cats is he really, 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 I was going to say gets off on, but that would be the wrong way of saying it. He really has a passion when people start saying that other people saw the same thing at the same time. So if it's a shared experience and you both see the same thing, that's the thing that makes his ears prick up. And because for a lot of people, if it's an individual thing that's happened, then yes, you can probably find a scientific reason. But two, three people all seeing the same thing, four people saying the same thing, then that's a lot harder to dismiss scientifically, I think. So you've got a couple of instances there where you say that, well, more than two actually. Your friends saw that hat man in the street, and then your brother saw the man at the end of the bed, and then your husband saw a hat man in the doorway. So if I'm going to say anything, I think something's perhaps following you. That's what I would say. Or attached to you,
I've been
at least.
told that before by some sort of like psychic or medium before, because I have gone to psychics and mediums, and the first time that I ever went, the lady said, no, don't come into my house, I'm gonna cleanse you outside because I can see your attachments. And I was like, okay. And she literally cleansed me in the middle of the street so I could come into her house. And other like mediums or psychics have told me like, there's something following you. And then they ask me the common questions, which is like, does your back hurt? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, because you're carrying them. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
Well, I don't think there's any questions I want to ask you, anything else, but I would give you some advice, and my advice would be to just search out some ways, unless you actually like this entity following you around. I would definitely look around at trying to find some way to rid yourself of it.
Yeah, I've tried. Like I said, I've done cleanses. I've literally just reached out to people who do exorcisms, people who are witchy, and just find of any way to get rid of them. And I guess I do get rid of them for like a while, but then I feel like they show up the more negative energy that is around me. So
would you be able to tell us what kind of quote-unquote exorcisms you've actually been through, and from what religious background they've actually done these things on you, so that we can get an idea of whether or not these are going to work if somebody else has a hat man?
No, So I wouldn't say, I guess, exorcisms. It would just be like some sort of cleanse. So I've done the sage cleanse, and then I found that sage just tends to piss whatever it is off, and it just becomes more aggressive. So sage is a no-no. Don't do sage. I've done, there's like a white candle and like salt rituals that you put like on the window, and then you kind of open the window as you're putting the, no, before you put the salt, you open the window, you basically tell them to F off, and then you put the salt so they can come back in. I don't know if those actually worked. What other ones have I done? There's one with it's like sulfur candles that you put in a circle. You put yourself inside a circle of sulfur candles, and you basically from the inside chant like, oh, I get away from me, like I don't want you, you're not invited here with this circle, I'm protected type of thing. I don't think either of them work, and maybe the fact that I don't think that they work makes them not work. So I don't know, that I've done multiple stuff. I've had people do cleanses for me. Like I've had people just come over to my apartment and just do their witchy thing, and it doesn't work either. So yeah.
Okay, well, if anybody gets in touch with us off the back of this podcast and has an idea of what could help you, I will definitely email you and give you their advice, pass it on at least, and see whether or not it's something you would entertain doing. So I can feel for you, because I've definitely experienced some things myself.
Mm-hmm.
Katz hasn't experienced that many things, but I could definitely feel when you were saying these things, I could feel the passion in your voice when you was recounting some of the stories. So yeah, very passionate.
Thanks.
But it was a great story, though. Really, that'll make a brilliant podcast. It was a great story.
Well, I hope you guys, like it.
No, we've been really lucky. The guests we've had have been fantastic. The stories have been brilliant. But this is, for me, one of my favourites, I would say.
Yay. Well, I mean, I'm glad that I gave you some podcast content, and I'm happy that you guys let me share my story with y'all. Definitely, I'll keep in touch with y'all if I ever have any other stuff happen to me, which probably will happen. I'll just email y'all like, hey, I have a new story if you guys want to hear it.
Wonderful. We look forward to it.
Yeah,
we look
definitely.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Right, well, thanks very much for coming on, and yeah, we'll put the podcast together and we'll pass it on to you so you can come back and listen to what we have to say, and we'll speak to you again.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right, well, I just want to thank Kai for an absolutely fantastic story then. I really enjoyed that, I have to say, and it's going to be really interesting to see what Katz is going to make of this. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Katz. What do you think of that, Katz?
Well, in all honesty, I am a little bit stumped. We could take things in isolation and we could say, well, why, for example, might a bed shake? And there are lots of natural reasons a house might shake, even if you're in an area that's not prone to tremors. For example, movement of underground water can cause a house to shake. Even strong winds, can cause houses to shake. Nearby explosions at a quarry, or, there's lots of reasons that could cause that to happen. Why a bed only will shake and the house will not is something I cannot explain. Are we really clear in our memory that it was just the bed? Very, very difficult for me to explain that away. Again, we could look at seeing figures, seeing hallucinations out the corner of your eye, and we can look at how the eye works and why our peripheral vision is prone to the pareidolia of making out images that when we focus on it with the fovea, where our cones are more concentrated in our eye, where these images kind of disappear. There are lots of reasons that we might feel that we're seeing, for example, the Hat Man or whatever. But again, that doesn't necessarily explain why several people are seeing the same thing at the same time. I have looked at the causes of mass hallucinations, and the causes of mass hallucinations tend to be shared drugs or poisons or some kind of shared hypnotic event, which obviously there's no evidence of here. So it's very difficult for me to come up with a reason why so many people have seen the same thing, So even though I've got sort of semi ideas about how each fraction of this story is possible, to piece the whole thing together, it's very, very difficult for me. The only thing that I will say is that the shared experience between Kai and her brother when they were much, much younger is susceptible to the malleability of memory that we've talked about on here before. That the more you remember an event, the more you talk about an event, the more you ask each other questions about an event that's happened in the past, the more your memory changes and you allocate significance to things that might not have happened. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, who again I have mentioned before, successfully managed to plant real memories. She deliberately planted real memories of demonic possession and witnessing an exorcism into adult subjects. They genuinely believed, after the experiment that they had with her, through the way that she was questioning them and manipulating their memory, that they'd been witness to some kind of demonic event. And this is having a massive effect at the minute on the credibility of eyewitnesses in the court of law. If an eyewitness has been questioned over and over and over again, asked to recall lots and lots and lots of detail, even though they fully believe that the memories they have formed in their head were what happened, that actually might not be what happened. So I can't explain it away. I have inklings of what might be the cause for little parts of it, but I'm not going to give a reason that I think can tie that all together. No, I'm going to duck out of this one.
Well, I'm glad that you've backed out of that there, Cats, because to me this is very clear, or at least appears to be a very clear example of some kind of entity tagging along with Kai. And maybe that can stem back from her roots as from a grandma, basically, when her grandma was practicing voodoo. So who's to say that whatever was invited into their family basically tagged itself along to the child, and in that case that would be herself, and obviously her brother too. And there's lots of instances in this story, at least, that are very credible. The fact that she saw a person, she's going to say she saw a person in the garage or the shed the first time that she ever saw somebody, and then obviously all her friends saw this hat man in the street and then disappear. Now that's not easily explained away. Then you've got the moving of the bed, and that was really important because this story, this is where things start to actually become credible now, because this didn't just happen the one time, this happened on many different occasions, to the point where she actually left the room and had to sleep in a different room with her brother because she was too terrified to sleep in that room. It also got more credence when her mum, when she said that she was hearing these noises and things happening to her, took her away to be evaluated, and she was taken away to be quote unquote evaluated. And again, you just don't take a child to go and get these tests done if that child doesn't think something is happening to them. So it clearly must have been a very traumatic event that was happening as a child to her. Then, obviously, you move on and she moves to a different country. And in this different country, she meets another guy. She starts saging the room, which somewhat antagonizes this being, let's say, or this entity to suddenly appear. And not just appear to her, but also appear to her partner. Now, her partner's a skeptic. He didn't believe any of this. And what he describes is seeing a man in a trench coat, tall, red eyes, with a hat on, and standing in the doorway. and that is, to me at least, I mean, that is just undeniable. I mean, this is only very recent too. I mean, if we go back from when we recorded this, this would be less than 2 weeks ago that this actually happened. And apparently, the gentleman in question, his demeanor's changed. His personality is somewhat changed from this one event. Now, I don't know how you're going to explain that as being some kind of trick of the eye or something out of the corner of your eye when she explains that he watched this thing. And then obviously, when he was in bed, something happened to him when he was in bed. He dreamt of this figure in his dream, and he was convulsing. He was actually convulsing in the bed. And when he woke up, or when she woke him up, it turns out that that's what he was dreaming about, this figure. So, all things considered, I have to say that this to me is just a very scary story. There's a lot of bad vibes I get from this, real bad vibes. And I hope that Kai does what I suggested to her and actually goes out and gets some proper help for this, because this is something that I wouldn't want happening to me. It's something that I don't think anyone should have to go through. The fact that it's travelled from country to country, the fact that a grandma practiced voodoo, who knows what she's actually brought with her, because when I was a child, I had this African tribal artifact that was brought back, and I know evil when I feel it, and that was evil. I've talked about this before, and definitely can appreciate the evilness that goes along with some of these spirits. So I would definitely recommend that she does more than sage the room. She actually goes ahead and tries to get something to get rid of this entity once and for all. So that's my opinion, and I'm exhausted after that. I think I need to have a lie down. What about you, Cats?
I am exhausted, but I just want to echo. I know you said, you hope she can move on and get all this sorted. Whatever the reasons are, I hope it's sorted as well, because at the end of the day, whether it be supernatural, which you probably lean towards, or not supernatural, which I lean towards, it's something that is going to be playing on Kai's mind. And I just hope that whatever the issues are, they are resolved. And with that, I think I'm going to disappear.
Yep, me too. And we'll see you all in the next one.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.